All right. Good morning to you, period five. Hope you all are doing great. I wanted to create this video prior to your next timed writing um, so that you have thought about the text a little bit and you kind of have a little leg up. And there's also a couple more reasons. I want you to see my process. And what I'm going to do after I do this video, I'm going to create a discussion board. And what I would like you to do is to add comments about what you see happening in this passage. And then once you've done that, then you can open up AP Classroom and do the timed writing FRQ2 practice 4. You will only have 45 minutes, so definitely come prepared, so to speak. All right, here we go. The following passage is an excerpt from Desert Solitaire. Some of you read that book this year for the buzzer beater, published in 1968 by American writer Edward Abbey. Okay, so 1968 may be important. You may want to think about what that time period was like. Edward Abbey, okay, a former ranger in what is now Arches National Park. Okay, so a ranger we know is, the park service. They're there to, protect the environment, whatnot. In the book, Abbey opposes the forces of modern development. So that's super important. And I would imagine that's what this passage is going to more or less be talking about. And he argues for the importance of preserving a portion of the southwestern United States landscape as wilderness. So we are being given essentially the thesis, it sounds like, of the passage we're about to read. So again, he is arguing for the importance of preserving a portion of the southwestern United States landscape as wilderness. If you've ever been to the Southwest, the southwestern states include Arizona, Utah, New Mexico, and Colorado, I believe it may be referring to. And so what we have here already is this juxtaposition between forces of modern development versus wilderness. And so we're going to see this play out in the passage, I would imagine. All right, so they're setting us up a little bit for the, the rhetorical situation. We can imagine that the forces of modern development, what that might be. I would imagine it's anything from, buildings to, I don't know, cars, to anything that really gets in the way of wilderness as an experience. So when we think of wilderness, we're thinking of, let's see here, let me just highlight this. That's not quite what I was trying to highlight. When we think about wilderness, we're thinking about the natural world, right? We're thinking about peace and quiet. We're thinking about animals, right? We're not thinking about not thinking about humans, right? And so we tend to think of wilderness and modern development as a juxtaposition between, these two kind of very different things. So whether or not Abby's going to argue that, we don't know. But let's see what happens. And then he goes on to the passage, or the prompt goes on to say, read the passage carefully. Will do. Then write an essay that analyzes the rhetorical choices. So write an essay that analyzes the rhetorical choices Abbey makes to develop a particular vision of how human beings might coexist with the natural world. So we've already established that there's this juxtaposition between the natural world and the forces of modern development, the natural world being human type things, buildings, cars, and the natural world being peace, quiet animals, and not human. So what this prompt is asking us to do is to think about Abby's particular vision of how they may coexist. So part of what we're going to think about is what is that vision that he is imploring us to, to see. So, what is Abbey's vision? So, we want to keep that in mind as we are writing. Abbey's vision for coexistence, right? Let me add that here. Oh, can't put it there. All right, well, good enough. Okay, so let's take a look at the passage. Of course, here are the directions. It says, in your response, you should do the following. Respond to the prompt with a thesis that analyzes the writer's rhetorical choices. Okay, we know that. We need to select and use evidence to develop and support our line of reasoning to explain why we think he's used those choices. We need to explain the relationship between the evidence and our thesis. Of course, that's our commentary, right? We need to demonstrate an understanding of the rhetorical situation. Okay, again, clearly the rhetorical situation has something to do with Abbey as a ranger seeing these forces of modern development, right? You can imagine in a place that's going to become a national park, there were probably more and more and more cars, more and more people, more and more bathrooms that were being, created, more buildings that were being, established for these people coming in. And so probably what we can imagine Abbey was thinking or noticing was the quickly changing landscape of this area that became Arches. And he probably wrote this because he was starting to see all these forces and their impact upon the wilderness, right? So, that's kind of the situation. We can infer a lot about what the rhetorical situation was just by imagining who Abbey was as a park ranger and what he might have been seeing as this place, Arches National Park, was becoming popular, and or the place that would be. And if you've ever been to a national park like Yosemite or Arches, you will know that these places get really, really, really crowded. And the reason why people go is because they're so beautiful. But what happens is you have like hordes and hordes of people that want to visit these places. And so like I went to Arches a couple of years ago, and to go on a hiking trail, there were like 150, 200 cars lined up on the side of the road. And these cars were destroying the sense of nature that people really go to Arches for. I mean, and tons of people, and they're all with their selfie sticks taking pictures. And so what people go for is wilderness, but what they get are really these forces, right, of modern development. And part of that actually are roads, right? None of these places had roads to begin with. So part of what you have happening is human beings coming in, not only so they start by building roads, and then they bring their cars and they build buildings and the noises and all that. So you can really see that situation without being told what it is. Okay. Here we go. So rain puddles bring out other amphibia. We know amphibia, animals that walk on land and go on water. Even in the desert. So he's already started out with kind of this surprising thing about nature, right? That after a rain, new things occur. All right. It's a strange, stirring, but not uncommon thing to come on a pool at night after an evening of thunder and lightning. So, wow, he's already really bringing us into the secret world, right? Like, we're out at this pool of water that's formed after a rain, maybe in a rock or something like that. After an evening of thunder and lightning, it's this mysterious sense that he's establishing already. And see the frogs clinging to the edge of their impermanent pond. Impermanent meaning not long lasting, right? Short lasting, ephemeral, and they're clinging. So these frogs, these tiny little animals that we would never expect to see in a desert environment, are out there clinging to the edge of an impermanent pond. So we get the sense of these frogs being very, very like fragile creatures. And we get a sense of how difficult it would be for these animals to survive. Normally we think of frogs being in like a jungle environment. So already what Abby is doing is setting up the sense that nature is harsh and that animals don't have it easy. Bodies immersed in water, but heads out, all croaking away in tricky counterpoint. They are windbags. Usually we hear this word and we think of like someone who talks a lot. They're a real windbag, meaning they don't shut up. So he's already anthropomorphizing these frogs. With each croak, the pouch under the frog's chin swells like a bubble, then collapses. Wow, so really beautiful writing, paints a really strong portrait of the life of these frogs. He anthropomorphizes the frogs, and he also kind of like really implies that there are things out in nature that we would never expect, right? He uses the word strange to describe that, and also just starting out that the rain brings out things that you wouldn't, even in the desert, right? In implying that there's, we would never have expected. All right, so I'm going to pause this video because I only have 15 minutes per YouTube video, and so I don't know how much time I've even used so far. So I'm going to start again on the new video.